Good morning. It's Outside the Classroom. I'm meteorologist and science teacher Ryan Miller. Thank you for joining us. It's cold out here today. We're in the 40s and 30s in many locations, and thankfully we had some weather computer models to indicate and let us know that it was going to get cold here. So we've anticipated that cold and are just waiting, hopefully, here for some changes and some more sunshine to get us a little bit warmer. Thank you for joining us. We are talking about modeling this week on Outside the Classroom, not the catwalk modeling per se, but modeling and using computers and using physical models themselves to represent and analyze all of the things that are around us. We're looking at that. We also have our sports theme week here. Today's theme is basketball, and I'm representing one of my favorite basketball teams. I grew up in Ohio, and so that's why I'm wearing this shirt today. So please, if you're wearing or would be willing to put on a basketball jersey, shirt, T-shirt, anything to represent your favorite basketball team, we would love to hear from you. You can send us your photographs on Facebook, on Twitter, on Chime In. There are lots of avenues for you to connect with us. Today it's basketball, tomorrow it's baseball, and then Friday, get ready to celebrate and showcase your favorite soccer teams. We would love to see some of those pictures. So when we talk about sharing with us, there are a couple of ways you can do this. Let's get right to it and show you the easiest way to send us a photograph or to make a connection is if you go to WJLA.com. That's our website. If you go to WJLA.com and click on Chime In. Chime In is a link at the top of the page. It's a matter of just simply clicking right there. You can go and pull up any of the different bubbles that have been created for various topics. We have our Outside the Classroom bubble. You can certainly click on that and showcase your things with us here. Click on Add Media and we're good to go. Yesterday it's football. Corey and Manassas sent in Michigan football. I went to Penn State, Corey, so I don't know if I want to show that too long here, but thank you for sending that in, and please, send us stuff on Chime In. We'd love to hear from you. Now, let's talk about some things relative to the idea and the theme of modeling this week. And we use modeling in lots of different ways. Modeling can help us to make predictions. It can help us analyze. And so to put it together here, we've got modeling all around the world and around us in the world here. It helps us to analyze things that have already occurred, past events, and it helps to predict future outcomes. So modeling can do two things, look back or go forward. We can use it for things like weather predicting or behavioral predicting. We can predict the behavior of humans or organisms. We can look at and analyze business and economic situations with models, or architecture and design. So there's lots of different ways to consider and to think of modeling with respect to what we're talking about this week on Outside the Classroom. So we're going to be looking at modeling here. A great example of a model that you can do, and there are lots of toys. You can get out the old Legos and try to ask your kids at home, what could we do, what could we build, what could we model using some Legos? And so I have a little garage here, I believe, or it looks like more like a jail cell, built by my kids, and I don't even know what that is, a rope of some type. But nevertheless, here's a great idea to get out the Legos and to consider and build a model. If you wanted to look online for something, maybe there's a building or an architectural feature that you're interested in or your child's interested in, see if you can mimic that thing with Legos. So that's just an example of modeling through the lens of toys. You can use popsicle sticks to model things. If you have some of the popsicle sticks that are around the house, you could build with glue or tape and make some structures out of that. Yesterday, and I'll reach over here and grab it, we made bridges. Looks like a ladder, yes, but we made bridges with sticks that fell from trees because of the wind. So you don't have to go out to the craft store, you don't have to go out and purchase anything from any store, really. All about using different materials around the house to make it easy so that you can keep that learning process going while we're away from school and away from the classroom. So these are some examples of models that we've been going over and talking about. I would like to mention a few things. We're also looking at and trying to encourage some spelling. We've got the words of the day. So if you wanted to take some time, spell these out on sidewalk chalk, or perhaps you could spell them out on a piece of paper, or maybe you could build a model of Legos with these words. The easiest word probably to spell with Legos, and the first word today, let me get this cap out, is data. We're going to be talking about data. We need data often to make sure we can create a model. So data allows us to begin the process of modeling. Well, with data, you have to go through the process of an analysis, L-Y-S-I-S, which is our second word today. So analysis is our second word. And if you spend a lot of time investing in analysis of data, that will provide and give you what we call information. So that is our third word of the day. Information. T-I-O-N. Practice these words. Spell these words out. You can use lots of different things. Maybe use some Legos and spell out those words. Lots of different Lego shapes would allow you that opportunity. Or hey, if you have some popsicle sticks or just sticks from the yard, spell out these words with sticks from the yard in the yard, or on the sidewalk, or perhaps in your driveway, and let us see those words. Show us those words. We'd love to hear and see the work that you're doing. Speaking of the work that you're doing, just as a reminder, we have a couple of principles here at this show. Principles meaning themes and guiding ideas here for what we're doing. With Outside the Classroom, the main focus is about learning something new, not completing tasks. We're not here to give you homework to check boxes. We're here to try and give you some ideas that you can do simply at home. So grab some sticks that came out of the trees with the wind from yesterday. Spell these words out. Try to spell the words out with those sticks. These are the things we're trying to do to make learning active. So if you do those things in terms of making learning active, hopefully you can get some learning accomplished at home. Now, I wanted to mention and show you one other thing. We picked up some rain last night. We have another resource that you can use on the internet here. And if you go to, and let me just walk you through some of these steps. We have a website. The folks at ESRI were kind enough to allow us to use their software online to do some mapping. If you go to ArcGIS online, or arcgis.com, and if you click on this little button for search, you can go to this. If you type in ABC7 outside in the search window, it will bring up and pull up this, and it's ABC7 outside the classroom. Open it in the map viewer, and it will pull up this. Please, if you would use this, let us know. We have told you and given you instructions on how to build rain gauges to measure the weather. This website, if you go and click on this little device here and hit edit, you'll be able to put in the data that you collected wherever it is that you live, whether you're in the DC area or perhaps you're in Colorado. Either way, you can use this as a resource to show and share your weather data at home with us and outside the classroom. Good morning once again, and thank you for joining us on Outside the Classroom. We're here as a resource to keep that learning process going at home, to give you some ideas of things you can do to engage your children or the kids you're providing care for in the process of learning. Let's take a look here. I have a little homework assignment if you're interested. Right now, I'm teaching my environmental science students that I teach over at Washington Liberty High School. I am teaching them a couple of things about the atmosphere, and believe it or not, the atmosphere has layers. There is structure to the atmosphere. So what you're looking at here is a resource you can go to and download. And if you have the opportunity, actually, during the show, if you can go to WJLA.com, pull up the Outside the Classroom website, you can access this document, print it out, and then you can start filling it out. We're going to reveal the answers to the blanks that you see on the screen here when we wrap up the show a little later from now. So think about doing this, the atmosphere, and this is an example of a model that you can use, a model of our atmosphere. We'll have all those answers coming up. So let's talk about another activity that you can do at home that is simple. If you happen to have a globe, chances are you don't, but if you do, that's great. You can use a ball, you can use a basketball, whatever, but here is a great way to introduce the concept of modeling to your kids. So let's pretend for a few moments that we have the Earth, and this is the actual Earth. So with that in mind, I have some sidewalk chalk and some measurements that I've taken and done. If this were the actual Earth, then how big would be this? How big would the sun be? How big would the other planets be? So there's ways you can do this using simple mathematics to create a model of the solar system. You could do it in an area where you probably have more space than just a typical sidewalk, because you're going to need some space. But I went and I took and did some measurements, and this is 12 inches in diameter, and the Earth's diameter is 7,926 miles. So 7,926 miles across, but this is really just 12 inches. So that 12 inches is representing the Earth. And we're going to use, and if you do the math, the sun, if this were the actual size of the Earth, would have a diameter over 100 inches. In fact, it would be a radius. So my kids and I took some string, and we put labels on here, and we measured out the size of the different objects that we're going to be drawing. So we did that. This is the radius, not the diameter, the radius of what the sun would be, the size of the sun if that were the Earth. And we did it for some other planets as well, for Jupiter. And we also looked at, if the Earth were the size of a smaller object, how big would things like Jupiter be? So we're going to show you and start getting out the chalk and start setting this up. So if you want to take some notes here at home, we're going to have this activity of creating a model for the solar system ready to go when we return from the break. Thank you for watching Outside the Classroom. Please also, one other request, we're on a mission to figure out the state birds of every state in the United States. So if you're watching us in Indiana, and if you happen to know someone from Indiana, could you please ask them, what's the state bird of Indiana? And get back to us here. I'm on Twitter, RyanMiller_WX, or at WJLA.com. Good morning, this is Outside the Classroom. We are looking at the theme of modeling this week and how we can use models to learn about the places that surround us, the things that surround us, or even our solar system. So welcome back. You're taking a look right now at an image. We've seen this before many times, many of us have, of what the solar system looks like when you look at the perspective of the sun. It's called a heliocentric perspective, with the sun in the center of our solar system and all of the planets that orbit and go around it. So this is an example, a model of the structure of our solar system. And this is a fun activity that you can do at home, and it really doesn't involve much other than a little bit of mathematics. On our website for Outside the Classroom at WJLA.com, we have instructions on how you can set this up mathematically. But what we did, and I have my able assistant Kennedy with me here today, is we're going to try and come up with a model of what the actual planet's size would be if the Earth were a globe. So we measured it out, and actually, Kennedy, can you do me a favor? Come back here for a second, and let's make sure you stand on this in the right spot. I have a piece of string that we measured out, and this would be the size of Jupiter. Could you stand on that as tight as possible, please? And then I have my string right here, and I run it out. This is the radius of the size of Jupiter. Whoops. Assistant moved just a little bit. Can you let go just for a second? And let's put it right here. This is a good spot. Now stand on that as tight as can be. Fingers work too, that's fine. Just hold it tight so I can do this. And we're gonna set this radius up and do a quick circle of Jupiter. And this is the actual size of Jupiter. Now, we're doing it in the street, and obviously there are safety issues with that. Nevertheless, if you can access maybe a driveway or a larger parking lot and it's safe, then go ahead and do that. And this would be, can you go get the globe, Kennedy? This would be the actual size, and forgive our imperfect circle here, of Jupiter if the Earth were the size of a globe. So let's put the globe down for a moment. And here we are. So that's how big the biggest planet actually is if this were in fact the size of the Earth. You can turn it into a spelling activity. Do you want to spell Jupiter?
Yeah.
Do you know how to?
No.
Okay, well, what do you think Jupiter starts with? J. So it's J, U, P, I, ter. T, E, R. So Jupiter is this big if that were actually the Earth. So this is just one activity that you can do at home to build a model and scale the actual size of the solar system if that were the planets. Now we have a couple of other things that we can do. Let's pretend for a moment that that is not the Earth. Let's pretend that this piece of candy, don't eat this, in my hand, that this piece of candy were the Earth, okay?
Oh, that's so tiny.
Yes, so if this were the Earth, then how big would the sun be? Or how big would other items be? So let's take a look here.
Let's see what Mars would be.
Let's see what Mars would be. Well, we could do that.
Oh, this should be the size of Mars because it's red.
Oh, it's Mars is red, so that's a good idea here. But let's talk about this for a moment. If that were the size of the Earth, and make sure you show Mr. Rich that Earth again. If that were the size of the Earth, then what would the diameter of the sun be?
We would be ants if this was the size of the Earth.
You would be ants. Well, we'd be even smaller than that, that's true.
You'd be like
So it would be 13, a radius of 13 inches. So let's get another piece of chalk and we can set this down.
Will, yeah, you're okay.
And this is going to be, if you can do me a favor, Kennedy, put your finger on that very tightly.
Put the,
And I'll, no, shh,
put
shh.
the earth on it.
Yes, I'll hold this. Push down on that hard. And we're going to draw this out. And this would be what the sun would be, the size of the sun. Now, blue obviously is not the appropriate color to use here. For the sun, I'll just draw it quickly. So if the Earth were the size of this piece of candy, if it were that size, that's how big the sun would be. Leave it there on the ground so that folks can see. Put it on the ground, Kennedy. Thank you. So my assistant here is working hard, as we all are. And isn't this exactly what's happening at home and everybody's home here as we're trying to keep that learning process going? The listening process needs to keep going too. So we've got the sun, and this is the size of the Earth. We're going to show you how far away the Earth would be if this were the actual size of these objects. That comes up when we return. Welcome back to Outside the Classroom. I'm meteorologist and science teacher Ryan Miller. We're building a model of the solar system right now. We're using our street, which is quiet, but if you're going to be using your street to do this activity, obviously you want your parents involved and you want to monitor and be careful of any cars or traffic that's out there. But we have a really quiet street at the moment. So we're looking at building a model of the solar system. And a few seconds ago, I showed you a picture, or I gave you an image of a piece of candy that of course has now gone somewhere, probably in my daughter's pocket. But if the Earth were a tiny piece of candy, that would be the size of the sun. And so we measured it out, we drew a circle. That would be the size of the sun if our little piece of candy is about that big. Now, to get the actual distance, the size and the scale correct, if that were where the sun is right now, the Earth would actually be 244 feet away. And you can see my daughter down there, that's Kennedy. We measured this out actually this morning. That's 244 feet away. So she's holding up the Earth, that little tiny piece of candy, and we've got the sun right here. That's the actual distance. 244 feet representing about 93 million miles. So that's how far away we are from the sun. And that's an idea for you that you can do at home, looking at building a simple model of the solar system. Now, just a few minutes ago, we showed a picture, and if I can get the folks that are helping us out wonderfully back at the station to put up that picture of the atmosphere once again. This is a resource you can download from our website, and you can look at and see that if you printed this out, the Earth actually has layers to its atmosphere, and there's structure to the atmosphere. So if you wanted to fill out the answers, here you go. If this were the Earth, and I'll just give it an E here, we've got different layers of atmosphere around us. The first layer is called the troposphere, and that's where we live. We live in the troposphere. The troposphere is where most weather occurs, and pretty much most of life occurs. Beyond the troposphere, we have another layer to our atmosphere, and that layer is called the stratosphere. Oh, thanks. Can you hold on to it for me? Thank you. So the stratosphere is the next layer above the troposphere, and the stratosphere actually holds and keeps our ozone layer. That's where we have a protective layer right above our heads, well, not right, it's actually several miles up, that protects us from ultraviolet light from the sun. Beyond the stratosphere, there are other layers. We've got the mesosphere, the thermosphere, and these are all things that you could think about doing, models that you can create easily. You can use markers, you can use pencils, you can use paper, you can use chalk, you can have your 7-year-old, excuse me, we just had a birthday not too long ago, your 7-year-old. This is a way to keep learning active and engaged, and that's an idea for you. This is Outside the Classroom. I'm Ryan Miller. Thank you so much for joining us on this chilly morning here. Please let us know how we can help. Good morning and welcome back to Outside the Classroom. I am meteorologist and science teacher Ryan Miller. We are here to provide as many resources as possible to keep that learning process going when we're away from the classroom. We have activities that are actually designed to be very simple, done with things that you have potentially around your house, and it keeps the learning process going here. We're trying to model good instructional and good educational practices ourselves by activating prior knowledge and asking our kids to give us some information about a topic before we get into it. That is one way that teachers really try to provide a really strong educational and teaching opportunity in the classroom. We're asking our kids to learn and make it active as well, and we're trying our very best to give you some educational assets that you can use to keep that learning process going. So thank you again for joining us. We've got some words of the day that we'd love to see you spell out, and if you wanted to spell these words out, perhaps you could use sticks that fell from the trees over the last few days. Maybe you could use some Legos to do it, or whatever you would want to use. Pen and paper certainly works as well. Data, analysis, and information. Data, analysis, and information are three words that are often correlated and used as we try to model and come up with ways to predict and to analyze what's going on with the world around us. So we're talking about modeling. A great example, a simple and elegant example of a model would be a globe. We have been looking at if this were the actual size of the Earth, what would the other planets, what would the actual size of the moon be? We have an activity that's up on our website that you can use to look at the Earth. If this were the actual Earth, what would the size of Jupiter be? Jupiter would be a really big planet, by the way. I can tell you and show you that if this were the actual size of the Earth, we measured some things out, that if that were the size of the Earth, this would be the radius. This would be half of the size of the diameter of Jupiter. So to spell that out, one of the things you could do, and I'll just quickly use this. I had a helper here earlier, but I'm just going to use this leg on this table. If this were the size of the Earth, you can measure out a piece of string. The math is actually quite simple. It's set up like you would do cross multiplication. So 12 inches, which is the globe, represents 7,926 miles, which is roughly the diameter of the Earth. And if you set this up, and if you went and did the math, and I did here, I want to make sure we're getting this correct, you want to find out, well, how big would Jupiter be? Well, Jupiter has a diameter of 88,846 miles. So you want to know, what would x be? Well, if you cross multiply, so x times 7926 is 7926x, and then you cross multiply these, if you take and multiply this by this and divide it by that, you're going to get your answer. And your answer actually would be 67. And that's what this length is. So we measured out a piece of string, and let me get this out of the way here. Jupiter has a orangish, reddish, a unique color to it based upon the chemicals that are in the atmosphere there. So I can do this on our porch by setting up my radius and start drawing a circle, a little geometry. So if the Earth were the size of our globe, and let me move my things around here for a moment. The outside the classroom studio, aka my porch, gets a little jam-packed here with lots of things. So we've got this radius going, and so that's the size of Jupiter. So if this were the size of the Earth, the globe, Jupiter would be a ball this big. And you can work on your spelling like we did outside, and that's an idea for you to do simple modeling that allows you to kind of see the size of our planets in the solar system relative to objects that we're very familiar with, that being the globe. So we're looking at models this week. If you are curious and want to go back and look at one of the episodes that we have done in the past, all of those are on our STIR app. And if you go to STIRR in your app store, you can download that app on your phones, and every Outside the Classroom, our segments, our shows are accessible to you on STIR, STIRR. So if you're watching us on Facebook and you happen to live in Oregon, well, thank you so much, first of all, for tuning in. And secondly, you can go and access those prior shows and the activities that we're doing to keep that learning process going. So STIRR is another way you can find us. Now, we've been asking folks to interact with us on Facebook and to interact with us on Instagram and Twitter, and we have some questions. We would like to know, what is the state bird of Indiana? We've kept a list of the different state birds, and I believe we have Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and Florida covered. But we need to know now, and we're curious to know, what's the state bird of Indiana? If you're watching us in Indiana, please let us know. Maybe you live in Indiana and don't know. Well, look it up and let us know. That would be a great way to keep the idea of the state birds going here on Outside the Classroom. So we've got spelling, we've got birds, we've got planets, we've got it all. We're talking modeling this week. We're trying to map out and look at different ways to model the atmosphere, model the Earth, model the weather that occurs around us. All of these are different ways to look at the Earth in a different perspective, from a different perspective, and try our very best to analyze what's going on around us so that we can do the Earth good, so that we can do and make predictions on what's going to happen in the future. We'll come back in just a few moments with more modeling and more ideas for you to do at home.
Hi Ryan, Salome here, your favorite marine ecologist based in Vancouver, Canada. And I hear you talking about modeling today. And in the marine world, we use modeling a lot. Just like on land, we're not able to collect all the data that is out there, whether if it's on fish or on oceanography. So we use models to predict or to fill knowledge gaps. And one example is, and that's very important for us humans, is assessing fish populations or fish stocks in order to designate the amount of fish that fishermen can fish. And we use models for that. We use information about their life history, how long they live, how far quickly they reproduce, how long it takes to grow into adults. And we also use some data of knowledge about how many of them are out there, what's roughly the size of the population. And then we use models to understand the entire size over a specific area. And then from that, we can dedicate a quota to and pass that on to fishermen, and then they know how much fish of that species or population they can fish without collapsing or making that fish population go extinct, which is really important, not just for the fish, but also for us, because if we want to continue harvesting that fish, we need to make sure that we're doing it sustainably. So these modeled stock assessments allow us to do that. Another example of really important modeling that we're doing, and currently a lot of scientists are looking into this, is what we call the tropicalization of temperate marine habitats. And by tropicalization, I mean we have species from warmer water regions or tropical regions that are moving into our temperate regions because our weather and our climate is changing because of global warming and climate change, meaning things are getting warmer. And it means that now the distribution for many species is expanding, so they're able to live in other places as it's getting warmer. And this is something we're trying to predict and model for, to see if we can plan for any adaptations for the arrival of species that may change that ecosystem. And yeah, models, very important. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the session.
And that was Salome Buglas, my friend and National Geographic explorer. She is a marine scientist, and she does most of her work in the Galapagos Islands. So if you're interested in using a model, a quick way to do it would be to get a map out or perhaps a globe. The Galapagos, where Salome does a lot of her work, she's currently in Vancouver, which is on the western edge and western side of Canada, but the Galapagos Islands are a part of the nation of Ecuador, and they are out in the Pacific Ocean. So that is where a lot of the work that Salome does as a marine scientist and National Geographic explorer, when she is looking at and trying to go after the different types of kelp species that she specializes in. So here's an example of a model. Modeling is used to determine and predict how many fish we can take out of the ocean or how many crabs we can get from the Chesapeake Bay. Modeling plays an integral part of our lives in analyzing the past and helping us to predict the future. I wanted to show you another model and give you another example of things that you can do at home that are easy. If you go to the WJLA.com website, we have an outside the classroom web section on there, and you can go, and if you clicked on downloadable resource, this is an actual diagram that I put together for you that you can print out, assuming you have a printer at home, and I really hope you do, or perhaps you know somebody that does. But there is a worksheet that I made that you can do and you can print to get an idea of the atmosphere, what it looks like, and this is a model of the atmosphere. If you have printed this out, I can share and show you some of the things that are a part of our atmosphere through this model. So I have a diagram up here that has the answers, and those blank spaces that you see on that map or that model that you diagrammed are showing up right here. My students, my environmental science students, are actually doing this right now as part of their online learning classes. But the atmosphere that we have high above our heads actually has structure to it. We live in something called the troposphere. That's where most weather occurs. And if you'll notice, we've got this funky orange line that is also moving back and forth. That's what happens to temperature as you go higher and higher and higher above the surface of the Earth. So if you've been in a plane, and planes are flying roughly at about that height there, a little bit close to 6 miles up. It depends on where you are in the Earth, really, because these layers actually change. But the temperature gets colder as you get higher through the troposphere. But in the stratosphere, it actually goes up. That's because ozone's being created that helps to heat up the atmosphere here. The mesosphere, it gets cold again, and in the thermosphere, temperature really gets high, and it gets lots of heat up there because there's less air molecules. But the sunshine likes to vibrate and get those air molecules moving in the thermosphere, and so that's why it looks like there's temperatures that increase the higher you get above the surface of the Earth. So here's a model of the atmosphere. We've got a model of the planet. We're going to get into some math modeling in just a few minutes when we return.
Hey everybody, it's Dr. Cindy T. Graham here, licensed psychologist and owner of Brighter Hope Wellness Center. I am here with my two sons, Noah and Porter, and we're going to show you how to make a homemade ant farm using things that you have around the house. So a mason jar, and then we have dirt from our backyard. We've got grass, and we've got sticks. And then we also have a few bottle caps, and the bottle caps...
And also, I want to use this when the ant farm is done. I want to stick this in.
All right, I think that'll be great decoration. And so if you don't have something like a mason jar, you can always use anything that's see-through, and the point in it being see-through is so that you can see how the ants build their tunnels. So you can use an empty soda bottle. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and build it. So we're gonna go ahead and I know it's a little bit muddy.
I just sacrifice it for my hands.
That's right, yeah, you're sacrificing your fingers. All right, so we've got the dirt in, and that'll be, and the dirt is already wet.
It's mud.
Ugh,
all right, now let's go ahead and get Porter. Do you want to put the grass in?
Yeah.
Sure, you can go watch. You go ahead and put the grass in.
That can be their like climbing thing.
Exactly. And what else did we have for them to climb on? We've got the sticks.
Down. Oh my gosh, the mud is cold.
All right, let's put in the pedals.
All right.
There we go.
So now we're going to, so we're going to put in the decorative flower. Go ahead.
And you're gonna have to put these on top. And then
what are the bottle caps for?
the bottle caps are for the food and water.
All right. And what kind of food do ants like to eat?
Seeds
and nuts.
And how will we catch the ants to put in the ant farm?
A jar.
Maybe we could put like an apple and maybe it'll attract something.
Exactly.
Because maybe it's like sweet stuff.
That's right.
Like candy.
That's right. And then we put the cap on after you put your ants in, of course, and that's it.
And that's how you build your
Ant farm.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to Dr. Cindy Graham and her kids for that look at a model of what's happening around us with ants and a homemade ant farm. Great example of a model. Cindy, thank you so much. If you're not afraid to have a few ants in the house or in the backyard, well, then there you go. That's a perfect way to look at and model the behavior of the ants as they work through and do all the things that they need to do to keep things going. So we're going to talk about models and switch over from a science and nature perspective over to math. And I love math. Being a meteorologist, it's something that I was able to study a lot of, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but I really enjoy working with geometry and in particular something called trigonometry. So I was thinking about models and what would be a great example of a model. And this is a little higher level math here than what you would typically do in maybe an early elementary classroom, but nevertheless, it does explain a couple of things. And this is called the Pythagorean Theorem. And for those of you keeping score at home, that starts with a P. We've got A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Lots of funky math, but it really can translate into something easy and elegant to understand. Let's take a look at a triangle. And for a triangle, and this triangle that I gave you, I have these 2 meter sticks, and I recognize you may not have meter sticks at home. It doesn't have to be a meter stick. It can be a 1 foot ruler. And if you don't have a ruler at home, don't forget, we've got a resource on our webpage at WJLA.com. You can download a ruler template, you can print it out and make your own ruler at home. So there are lots of ways to measure, but a squared plus b squared plus c squared. Let's look at this as a model. We're going to build a triangle, and we're going to make this side of the triangle I just did our A side, and it's 1 meter long. We're going to make B, pun intended there, our bottom of the triangle. So I'm going to add another meter to this. So this side of the triangle, the bottom of it, is going to be our B side. And I will write B here, and this is 2 meters long. So if it's 2 meters, and B is equal to 2, and A is equal to 1, then if you take A, so A squared, A is 1 times 1, plus B squared, which is, and B is 2, so 2 times 2 is 4. So here's our equation setting up, and we're going to do this right now and quickly do the math. It's very simple, but if you take your A, which is 1 times itself is 1, plus B, which is 2 times is 4. That's going to equal C. Now what is C? C is the other side of the triangle. So 2 plus 2, or excuse me, 2 times 2 is 4, and that is 1. So 4 plus 1 equals 5, but 5 squared. So 5, 2 times, 5 times 5 is 25. So we are going to look at and do some work here with this and show you and showcase some math when we return. Once again, good morning and thank you for watching Outside the Classroom. I am Ryan Miller. We are trying to come up with ways to keep that learning process going, whether it's science, whether it's math, whether it's geography or geology, anything. We're here as a resource to you and to try and provide as many different things that can be done easily with simple things around the house that would ultimately end up being a great benefit from the learning process and learning side of things to you and your children. We are all tested right now trying to balance work and life and all of the items, and I tried to think about a couple of things relative to the idea of modeling as it applies to math, whether you're using the Pythagorean Theorem and measuring out and looking at things, whether you're trying to size up and create a model of the solar system. We're just trying to give you some things to do that are simple at home from an educational perspective and a teacher, and this is the teacher in me talking. I try to model some of the things that we as teachers do in the classroom to make the learning process more efficient. You can activate prior knowledge. You can ask your kids before you start doing an activity. What do they know? What do they bring to the table? That's a great way to model teaching and proper teaching techniques as you work with your children at home. Another good piece of advice here is to make learning active. If you're sitting there talking to them constantly and lecturing them, well, that's one of the more inefficient ways to teach. So if you make learning active, you come up with ideas, you're asking questions, and you get them outside, that does a heck of a job of making the learning process more efficient and makes it a little bit easier for you. I'm here as a resource. You can find me on Twitter at RyanMiller_WX. You can interact with me on our station's Facebook page at WJLA.com. Chime in, send me an email. If there's anything I can do to help give advice in terms of teaching and coming up with activities at home, I'm here for you. So we have created, just to recap, models of mathematics. We've done modeling here of the Earth. If the Earth were the actual size of a globe, what would the size of Jupiter be, or the sun if the sun were here? We're here as a resource. We've got lots of activities for you to do at home. Thanks for watching. I'm Ryan Miller.